Jesus and the Two Marys. Cathar Love 158. I'm not religious. I respect those who are religious, but overall I don't think religion has served humanity too well over the years. These days religions are quite bland to what they used to be. They were quite terrifying to the population in times past. But I gave religion away very early in life, and even though I went to a number of conflicts, I served in a few wars, I never felt the need for religion. They say soldiers become religious in a war. Well, I'm sorry, I missed out. But one thing has intrigued me all my life, from the period when I was religious as a kid, raised as a Catholic, until I gave it away about the age of 14 or 15. But I've always been intrigued by Jesus. Not the Jesus that one's taught, but the actual Jesus, the Jesus in real life. What was he really like? What did he look like? What was he really like as a person, getting away from all the hype, the hubris? And over the years, I've searched far and wide, high and low, but there's not much out there historically. The plain fact is that of the Roman historians, or the historians of the time, there's none of them mention Jesus or Christ, or his family. And yet, quite a lot, there's certainly in Josephus, there is quite a large account of John the Baptist, but there's only 20 or so lines referring to Jesus, and obviously they were put in at a later date. The editors state that, because it's written in such a way that it's not in keeping with the way the rest of the book is written. So the search went on, and today what has happened throughout the world, there's been people, not just Christians, the Israeli archaeological department. In fact, when Ben-Gurion, the first president of the state of Israel, he asked his archaeologists, the scientists, to go out there and find evidence to back up the story of Israel, the stories of the Bible. Well, they did so, did as instructed, and after decades and decades of searching the desert, looking for cities, Jericho, for instance, and you can Google this. It's quite a lot on Google with the archaeologists who went out there, and they simply said, well, actually they've stopped. They've given it away because at all that time they had not found any evidence of Abraham, who's the father of Judaism, Christianity and Islam, no evidence of Moses, no evidence of King Solomon, no evidence of David, and no evidence of Jesus. They've had a very sorry time of it. There's no archaeological evidence to support these stories. Not only that, in Egypt, where history is literally hammered into stone, even little details, the things like the plagues of Egypt and the census and things like that that were supposed to have happened simply aren't there. They're not listed. So the plot deepens. But what has happened is, in order to get some idea of what people looked like, their appearance at the time of Jesus, what a Semitic man, a Semite, looks like, of course they've got skulls, and from those skulls at the time of Jesus, they've reconstructed what they consider an average Semite man. This Professor Neves of Manchester University, he does reconstruction the same way as they do it with detectives for skulls, and they do that facial reconstruction. And so we had that. So this is what they came up with. Now, apart from this, they do know that at the time the Romans were clean-shaven, but the Jewish people had short beards and short hair. They also know that if one was a philosopher, to show that one was a Jewish philosopher, one's beard was even cropped closer, and one's hair was cropped even closer. But so these are facts. But we have these Renaissance paintings, Photoshop paintings of Jesus today with his long hair, long beard, long European face, and it's simply not true. Now, does the appearance of Jesus really matter? Well, I could live if I didn't know, but it's still interesting to know. We are curious people after all. Not everybody, but some of us are more curious than others. And we have the earliest paintings from Israel, Syria. Here's a number of them. But in those paintings, Christ is beardless. And some of these were some 600 years later, after the time of Christ. So the same thing happened with Mary Magdalene. They don't know what Mary Magdalene looks like, but they also took a female skull, a typical female skull, as of that time. And so this is what they came up with the face of Mary Magdalene, which is not unattractive at all. So we all know the traditional biblical tale of Jesus and the Holy Family, although the Gospels contradict themselves as to where he was born. and quite a lot of things. And the fact that they state that Mary had a quite a large family. But I won't go into those things. But what I did do, and you know that I have guides, I have Cathar guides that give me some information when I asked. They don't always, sometimes they say no. And interestingly, when I asked about Jesus a few years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, they just said, no, not interested in talking about it. But they've relented or whatever, things have changed, I don't know what it is, but they were happy to talk about it. And they just wanted to explain how, because the medieval Cathars regarded themselves as early Christians, primitive Christians. In other words, they tried to follow the example of Christ. Some people say Christ consciousness. And that they believed they did that in the fact that Christ, the thing that he promulgated, he preached was love. And they regard themselves as primitive Christians. Because Catharism really owes much of its origins to Mani, to the prophet Mani, who travelled across to China. And what he did, or his genius, was that he took the philosophies and teachings of Taoism, Buddhism, and combined them together. The duality, the Chinese yin and yang, the duality of everything. And he combined his philosophies with Christianity. And it was a worldwide philosophy. He was unfortunately flayed alive for his trouble. And of course, a major part of that was reincarnation. So the Cathar philosophy, the Cathar beliefs are tied around far more around the philosophy of Mani, which went on to influence the Balkans, and then the Bogomils, which then moved across to Europe. So the Christian side of Catharism was based on primitive Christianity, or the early Christians, as they believed it was. So what was their take on Jesus and his family, Mary Magdalene, etc.? Well, as I'm told, it's actually a little similar to Holy Blood, Holy Grail. I'm sure many of you have read that book. And in fact, a lot of people, they tell me the first time they ever heard about Catharism was from that book, Holy Blood, Holy Grail. And it's a good read. But it would have looked from the Cathar point of view, and they also got their information from outer guidance, from their guides. Because Catharism, if anything, was a very mystic, deep meditation. They also learned the skills of having the soul depart from the body, so they could separate the spiritual side, and we call it astral travelling, which is what they used when they were being burnt to death. They actually went into the flames and they were separating the soul from their body, and as such did not feel the pain or the pain from the flames as others did. Now, whether it worked for everybody, I don't know, and especially young people. But anyway, with getting back to Jesus. So he was a rabbi, an Orthodox rabbi. History doesn't argue with that. But being an Orthodox rabbi, they're usually married by the age of 30. And according to the Cathar story as told to me, Jesus was married and he did marry Mary Magdalene. Not only that, they had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. Jesus was crucified, but as the Cathars say, it was his body, not his spirit. It was really a phantom. So the body was there, but the soul wasn't. The soul had departed the body. Was Christ resurrected? Well, that's not even the correct word. What did appear to his mother and Mary Magdalene, his wife, was his spirit. Ghost, if you like. So he appeared. Now, who knows what was said? And I haven't asked about this, but if I did appear, I'd be telling my mother and my wife to get out of here. This wasn't a good place for you. In any case, whatever happened, a year later, after he was crucified, that the 2 Marys, that's his mother, Mary Magdalene, his wife, they took a boat, ship, with Joseph of Arimathea, and they sailed to France, to around Narbonne, the area of Narbonne. From there, they settled in an area called Rennes-les-Bains, Rennes, Lesbain. I'm told that the 2 boys, they had regular families and children, and now their descendants are scattered here and there throughout Europe. So quite a few people would have bloodlines going back to Jesus. The daughter didn't marry, but she accompanied her mother. And an interesting point that they told me was that when the mother of Jesus died, she was buried in a cemetery at Rennes-le-Château. There was an old cemetery there that people were buried, an ancient cemetery. And the church, quite possibly unbeknownst to the fact of the people being buried there, the church was built over that. So in actual fact, that the mother of Christ is buried in a grave along with others. It was a cemetery. And there, but she retained her Jewish faith. But Mary Magdalene, she took on the Christian faith, or St. Paul's faith. What St. Paul was preaching at that time, the early Christians. So the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail, from a Cathar point of view, and totally different streams of thought or streams of historical accounts, and yet they're quite similar in many ways, in the fact that Jesus and Mary Magdalene did marry, and they did have a bloodline. Of course, they're saying that the Catholic Church knew about this and wanted to keep it hidden, but at those times there was no Catholic Church anyway. So Jesus, over the years, which is not uncommon for a famous person, has been transformed. And if we go back historically, we can see that he had close-cropped hair, olive to brown skin, a short cropped beard, and he had a Semitic face of the time. The closest they say to today's people who would have looked like Jesus was the Jewish people who live in Iraq. They're saying that they're possibly the closest to the Semitic peoples at the time of Jesus. I'd rather hold in my mind the image for me of what Jesus Christ probably looked like, or something similar to what Jesus looked like. The face that was reconstructed, it could have had far more refined features than what it has. The nose may not have been as broad. Who knows? These things like that we'll probably never know. But it is interesting that today, in today's society, we are approaching a more spiritual or a more mystical age where people are connecting more with their guides. On Monday, which is the 19th of this month, I'm going to see Ezio. He's a spirit medium and very, very good. But there, the people that he talks about will be in that room. He'll be looking at them, he'll be describing them, he'll be telling me their names, and the messages they're giving me. He'll be there. And he and his wife, they must have seen over the years now thousands of people. And these people who see these mediums, I used to go to, I mentioned before, Susie, the New Zealand Mary medium, and I saw her on 6 occasions. And even the dog is there. These spirit mediums, if they're good, they're wonderful. But there are these people all over the world. They're probably, these people, spirit mediums, have been around. But before, if the Catholic Church knew about you, you'd be put on a pile of wood very, very quickly and burnt to death. Now, either as a witch or whatever. But today, people can come out. People can go on YouTube or whatever and talk about their mystic experiences, the mystic reality that is part of their life. I would find it very, very hard now, if I didn't have the mystic side of my life that I can tune into. My guides are there. It's taken me, I've been a slow learner, I think, compared to some people, but I've got there. And if I can do it, believe me, other people can do it too. But I've said to people, I've talked to people about guides, and I've said, have you ever approached your guide? Have you ever tried to speak to your guide? Have you ever bought the runes or the I Ching or something like that to help you get a connection with your guide? And they go, no. Well, it'd be nice if you took the first step and gave them a hand. Sometimes they like a little bit of help from us. There's a story. It's an old Greek story, and the Greeks, if something happened or something was missing or they needed help, because their favourite saint was Saint Anthony. Saint Anthony was always there to give you a hand. But anyway, this fisherman went out. He wasn't a swimmer, and unfortunately his boat overturned, and there he was in the water, and he couldn't swim. So he yelled out, he prayed loudly to St. Anthony, "St. Anthony, save me, save me, save me, St. Anthony, save me." And St. Anthony boomed down, "I will, but would you please mind moving your arms a little?" They do like a little bit of help from us occasionally. But they're there. Everybody has a guide, guides. They're there for your, not just your spiritual or your mystical, but they're there also for your physical well-being. Why not take advantage of the situation? Sure, it may not happen immediately, but at least you can start. And if you don't start, I can guarantee you it's not likely to happen. So it's an idea to make a start. And to make a start is just literally having that quiet time for yourself and just say, "I'd like to connect with my guide." Get a pendulum. Start using a pendulum. Yeah. Do I have a guide? Yes. No. Make a start. Believe me, in life, it's nice to have a foot in both worlds, the world of spirit and in the physical world. Best of luck with that. Bye for now.